Everyone, welcome to the Call Sheet Podcast. I'm Gabrielle Simone, and today on the Call Sheet we have Anthony Grant.
Hi, Gabrielle.
Hi, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you again for having me.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anthony Ryan Grant. I'm originally from Miami, Florida. I just moved to Georgia from Los Angeles. I was in Los Angeles for almost 9 years and decided just to come back south and be a lot closer to family and more familiar trappings after a while. So
Good.
Feels good to be back on the East Coast.
Good. Okay, I thought you were from LA, but you just lived in LA for 9 years.
Yeah.
So did acting bring you out to LA?
It did.
It did?
It
Okay.
did, yeah.
So tell me the story of deciding to make the move from Miami to LA.
Okay. So at the time, I graduated college around 2011.
Okay.
And Florida, although it's improved significantly, the acting industry wasn't the greatest out there. The opportunities that you would see were very few and far between. The community there was very easy to build because you see the same 4 or 5 actors at the 4 or 5 auditions that there happened to be.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to give myself more of an opportunity. At the time, I wasn't married, didn't have kids or anything like that. So I'm like, if I'm gonna go, if I want to really give this a shot, now would be the window to just risk it and kind of see what happens. So I saved up for about a year and moved to LA. I want to say 2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And just try to figure it out.
All right, good. So when you went out there, did you have a roommate or did you just live on your own?
So initially I was renting a room in a house.
Okay.
For the first couple of months. And the one thing I would say about LA, especially LA pre-COVID, is everyone has a roommate story.
Right.
Unless you just come from money.
Right,
or have
right.
a really, really good job. The roommate is almost like a undertone of everything you do out there.
Yeah.
So shortly after moving out of that room from the house, it was just roommates.
Yeah.
From then on. And it's been fine. I mean, I had a couple where it's you're a little weird.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it thankfully, thank God, it was a fairly smooth experience in terms of that.
Good. Okay. So when you went out to LA, did you just jump right in and try to find auditions or did you have an agent?
So I didn't have an agent. I had an agent in Miami at the time. Obviously, we ended up parting ways because they were only doing for Florida.
Right.
So it was a lot of blind research. Thankfully, I had a couple of friends who had moved out there prior who were also into acting.
Okay.
I also had a couple of friends of the family who their kids were into acting.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
The wife in particular, she gave me a couple of tips. Here are some sites you need to start on. Here's some things you need just some general terms of things you need to do to kind of get your footing.
Right.
Into LA, and I was able to secure a manager within the first couple of months.
Oh, good.
And then kind of slowly built from there.
Okay. So what was your first job that you booked in LA?
So the first job I ever booked was for a car dealership.
Okay.
It was I think there was they did Toyota. I want to say it was Toyota cars they sold, and it was just a testimonial.
Okay.
It took me about a year to book that because, again, I was very green in terms of LA. A lot of the things that at that time that you would consider experience didn't translate in LA. It's you had your Florida experience,
right?
But in LA, that doesn't really count.
Yeah,
So it's just I thought I had a little bit, under my belt, but it was I was really starting over.
Okay.
So once I was able to kind of get a gist of okay, what does that look like by LA standards?
Right.
That's what kind of led to me booking that first commercial. I had gone home for a week, made my own reel because I didn't have a reel that fit LA.
Right.
Came back with that, and the director at the time saw my reel, thought I was really funny, and I was like, yeah, let's book you for this commercial.
That's so cool. Yeah, commercial work is very different than film and yeah. So what did you did in commercial work or was it just a compilation of all your training?
I mostly trained in theater actually. I went to college. I have a bachelor's degree in theater. It sits proudly collecting dust in my parents' home. But it did help because I found that although on-stage theater and film aren't necessarily one for one. When you're kind of trained in more theatrical-esque things,
right,
it spills out better than if you hone in on one thing. If you're only doing commercials, yeah, you probably do really, really good in commercials.
Yeah.
But really struggle on film and TV. Versus if you do film and TV, it's you already kind of have that range of I know I'm the mom chopping the vegetables,
Right,
but I have a
right.
background for this character and why I'm
Okay.
chopping it this way. You know, like it just
Okay.
helps give you a little bit more like backstory for whatever the character is.
Yeah, I really agree with that because theater, like live theater, makes you just a better actor all around. It pulls from everything compared to, stop, cut, reset,
Yeah,
that whole
and you don't
deal.
realize it. You're just like, I'm doing improv, right? Because you're playing off the audience,
Right?
or someone forgetting their line.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
like
yeah.
I'm knowing what to do with my body language because there's someone in the back who's like, I can't see you, I
Yeah.
can't hear you. And now you're like, you're grand gesturing to help grandma in the back, get a better view of your performance. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so after you booked that first commercial, how quickly were you able to get jobs after?
Not as quickly as I would have liked.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the things with the acting industry as a whole is you always kind of feel like this is it. Like when you book something, you're like, all right, this is the
This is
thing
it.
that like cracks the door
Girl,
wide open.
yes,
I'm
yes.
out of here.
Yes.
Only to realize that you're like, no, not quite.
Yeah,
Not quite.
yeah.
But what I found started happening is, one job leads to another where I think the acting industry as a whole, especially the film industry, is like it's what I like to call proof of concept.
Okay.
Where it's like you can do it, right? You
Right.
trained in it, you practice it. Like I'm sure I can do this role, but I need these people to see that I can do it.
Yeah.
So what started
I like
happening
that.
was that like I just kept doing roles, even sometimes for like lower pay, just because it was a unique opportunity of like, okay, I have a role as someone's son or someone's boyfriend or whatever the case may be. But what about as a doctor? What about
Right.
as a scientist? What about as a cop or a nurse? Like,
Yeah.
what can I do to kind of show somebody like, hey, this is me in some scrubs. Don't I look convincing? And that I feel like started to open more doors in that way.
Good. So like kind of broadening your range of
Yeah.
what people could see you as. Okay, so how long were you in LA? From 2015
2015
to
to June of 2024. So literally just like a month short of 9 years.
Wow.
July would have been 9 years in LA.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you transitioning from LA to Atlanta, have you started like getting your feet wet around here?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. Ironically, after I moved to Atlanta, I still have some agents out in LA and what
Okay.
have you, and I feel like there was work that started popping up as I moved here.
Oh.
So even though I've been here, I've actually been back in LA at 2 times since I moved here.
Okay.
Due to work that I got in LA, and I was
Oh,
like,
that's cool.
where was this?
Yeah, when I was out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you look forward to like immersing yourself in the Atlanta market?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. One of the things that, people say about LA, which I think is true, and it's unfortunate because I don't think it's intentional. LA is a very, what can you do for me? Or what have you done lately type area where
Okay.
because you have so many people commuting from out of state, right? You're like, you're the hope of your small town. You're from
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, whatever, with dreams of
Yeah.
becoming an actor.
Yeah.
You find that you're running into people who like their resumes is stacked to the heavens or they have no resume and they don't always want to really get to know you unless they feel like there's some type of like symbiotic partnership of like,
Got you.
you'll get something from me, I'll get something from you. And as
Right.
long as this works, we'll be friends.
Got it.
And I feel like, granted, I'm really not as like plugged into Georgia yet, of course, but I've always just felt like being raised in the South and coming from the South, I'm like, when people are genuinely nice out here,
Yes.
it's because they mean it.
Exactly.
Like the
Yeah.
follow through is there.
Yeah.
It's not like, yeah, just hit me
Yeah.
up. Like they're like legit about it.
Yeah, I say the same thing about Atlanta. It's the community. I know like everyone goes out to support everyone's different projects. Even if you're not working on anything right now, you want to support your friends. I really do feel that community because I want to get back out and start hitting up some of these networking events just to see what's new out there.
Yeah.
Because you can only get so much from social media.
True.
But yeah, Atlanta's big on community, and they'll put you on too. Like if they see you working and like, hey, I know somebody, let me,
Which is beautiful. Because
Yeah.
I feel like LA, not that LA doesn't have that, but again, because there's just so many people.
Yeah.
There's so many people.
Yeah.
Like you can't take it personally when the director you worked with that you were laughing with at lunch doesn't remember you. They've worked with 5 other people who were just as funny. It's not personal.
Yeah.
It's just like
that's true.
it's just a blur of faces.
Yeah, so, that's very true. Yeah. Okay, so take me back to like young Anthony. When did you get like bit by the acting bug?
Actually, ironically, college.
Really? Oh, so later.
Yeah,
in life.
later
okay,
on.
Okay.
I mean, granted, I feel like when I look back at everything, it was always kind of there. I was very like heavily involved in my church growing up, so like all the little Easter plays, Christmas plays.
Yeah.
What was it called? There's that one play that used to always come around where it's just like I can't remember, but it's just kind of like talking about, you make a decision here if you want to spend the rest of your life in heaven and stuff one of those type of plays.
Yeah, I know.
Always in those type of things. And like my church drama group and things like that. So I was always kind of involved in acting because, as a creative, like you're just like, oh, this is interesting.
Right.
But didn't really take it seriously. Then in college, I needed a couple of electives to finish my associate's degree.
Okay.
And I was like, I've done acting in high school. Let me just kind of see. And I took acting 1 and I was like, I think I want to do this. Like, do this for real.
Oh,
Change my major and just pursue my bachelor in acting from there.
That's really cool. Yeah. What school did you go to?
FAU.
FAU. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what do you wish you had known, like, transitioning into acting? Like what's one thing that
that's a good question.
Yeah, like, as a new actor.
For a new actor, I think you have to be more aware of the scope of people applying for that same job.
Okay.
I think social media has done a really good job of opening people's eyes, just in the general work environment of like, you're on Indeed and it's like, or at LinkedIn, it's like, hey, 2,000 other people have applied to be this dishwasher. Right. That's why you're not hearing anything.
Right.
From Chili's.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like for newer actors, when it comes to acting, you're like, man, like I did a great audition tape, or my headshot is this, or my look was like a 1-for-1 with the role they're looking for. Why didn't I hear anything?
Yeah.
Well, that's because 200 other people who looked just like that shot also, with a bigger resume and reel than you, also auditioned for that role. So you don't want to get too emotionally invested in an audition,
right?
Just for your own mental health and emotional health, of like, you start to question.
Yes,
right? Like,
that was me out of high school.
I don't blame you. Yeah. Right? Like, it's a natural
why do
thing.
they not like me?
I'm hearing crickets.
Yeah. Or you go and then like, you hear nothing, or it's a no, and it's just like, why?
Yeah.
But then when they used to do the open calls, you would see why.
Yes.
You would be in line with 200 people.
Yep.
And you're like, oh yeah, it's just one job.
Yeah. And you'd see 2 other people that look kind of like you.
True. Yeah.
Like, oh, this is gonna get tricky.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that I think newer actors have to kind of keep in mind of, like, there are a lot of people vying for these jobs.
Yeah.
And that's just to get to the audition process. That's not even talking about like the actual booking aspect of like, first it's 200 people, then it's 40, then it's 10, and there's only one role.
Right.
So it's one of those things where it's like, I know it's not easy, right? There's times where I get frustrated even now, but it's just like you can't take it too personally because there's just so many factors that you'll never know.
Right.
You'll never know.
So outside of acting, what do you do? Hey everyone, I just wanted to pop in and say thank you so much for watching The Call Sheet. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. And leave your comment. What's the best part of this episode that you like? Be sure to follow us on Fanbase, on Facebook, and on Instagram at The Call Sheet Podcast. We'll be putting up some behind the scenes clips and telling you what's coming up next. If you have any questions around the acting industry here in Atlanta, feel free to email me at thecallsheetpodcast@gmail.com. Okay, back to the episode. Do you do something else?
So I've actually been fortunate, I want to say, in the past couple of years to mostly do acting.
Okay, good.
I would say, like, during like the strike, especially last year, that was when it got the trickiest and kind of returned to like the day-to-day type job.
Right.
But I've mostly been fortunate to kind of stay with acting. It's like I attribute a lot of it to, obviously, yes, work ethic, but I make things a matter of prayer, of like, Hey God, anytime you feel like this is no longer my path, feel free.
Yeah.
I'm tired of struggling. Like, just feel free to pull me out, and send me in another direction. And I feel like every time I kind of get to that point, something happens.
Oh, good.
So I try to keep that in mind. I'm like, okay, until he tells me otherwise.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, let's keep figuring this out. And it's more or less. I don't want to sit there, but like it's just been like one triumphant story. But
consistent projects. So what's been some of your favorite projects that you've worked on?
Some of my favorite projects, I want to say I have two. The first one was like the first like quote unquote big commercial I did.
Okay.
I did one for GMC, like shortly after the whole like pandemic thing started.
Okay.
They were doing like a work from home campaign for GMC and stuff like that. And what was really cool about it was actually a self-submission, where it was one of those things where like the casting director like coded the name, so you didn't know what it was for at the time. And it wasn't until the callback where it's like, yeah, this is for GMC. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool, whatever, right? Do the audition with the director, end up booking it. And what was cool about it was like, it was one of those first big things where it's like, hey, we're gonna shoot on location. So we booked you a hotel.
Okay.
When you come in, just ask for this production name. Your room will be right there. And like, it was just like this whole big thing where it was like a 3-day shoot of, I'm at the hotel. We're driving GMC like base cars in the wilderness. I'm showing over the features and things like that. And I was like, I did it.
Yeah. Because you see those commercials all the time.
Yeah.
And that's cool. So was that like right outside of LA?
Yeah, it was actually shot mostly in San Diego.
Okay.
For the most part. So it wasn't that much of a commute.
Right.
I don't know what the Georgia equivalent would be. Have you been to Florida at all?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know like the distance between like from like Miami to say like Orlando?
Yeah. So what's that? Maybe 6 hours?
Like three.
Really?
Yeah, 3 to 4.
Okay.
It depends how deep you are in Miami, I would say. But like it wasn't too much of a commute.
Oh yeah, that's not bad. Because we've driven back in the day from Atlanta to Miami, and that was 10 hours.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I made that drive before too, so I was like, okay.
That was terrible. Never again. But from Orlando to Miami, so 3
like
4
3 to 4
hours.
hours.
Okay, that's not bad. Yeah.
So it was cool. It was just one of those things where I was like, I can't believe. It's like, Anthony, we're gonna have you do this, and you're in this shot and this shot and this shot, So that was really, really, really cool. And then I would say my first TV role was also really cool. Just in the sense of like, you do all these auditions, and again, you're not getting your hopes up, whatever.
Right.
And I think it was just more so, again, just like popping that bubble of like, I've been trying so many different ways to like at least get a role on TV doing something.
Yeah.
So they had me play like a rookie cop. I had to shave my little goatee, whatever.
What show was this?
It was for Betrayed on Discovery ID.
Okay.
I don't know if it's still running now, but it seemed pretty popular because it was one of those things like I didn't know about the show.
Right.
But it's like it was on its 4th season at the time.
Oh, okay.
So like,
so very
pretty
good.
well. Yeah, someone's watching it. So it was cool in the sense of like same thing, like a 2-day shoot. You get fitted for the uniform and everything. Like a murder mystery type genre of show, and it was just like, like I felt like it was like the actor's introductory package, where it's like you either start off as a cop, a detective, or like a nurse. So I was like, yes, 1 of 3, come on.
Right.
So it was just really cool in the sense of like, okay, like finally the pieces on the board of like resume were starting to build.
Good.
And everyone was super nice. So that helped
good. So you got a great experience on set. Okay. Yeah. So what is something that actors need to be prepared for when they arrive on set, when they're new and green and haven't,
that's a good question.
Been on set?
I would say, one, try not to be too in your head. Okay. Right? Like I think everyone has and it's normal, right? You have this idea of what you think it's going to look like. And for the most part, you might be right? You're going to come in, check in with the PA or whatever the case may be, but just be open to like the flow of the day of like, the main thing that you're responsible for is being on time, right? Even if you're going to sit around and wait for 4 hours, being on time. You don't want to be the person they're looking for.
Yeah, that's very true.
Like that's the last, you don't want to be that person. Hey, where's Gabrielle? Like, I'm getting off the highway right now. Like you don't want to be that person.
Okay.
So I'd say that's the most important, is just being prompt. Being where you need to be, just trying to be as present as possible. Like, I think at that point, what actors overlook about being on set is like, that's the end goal at that point. This is your victory lap. The hard part is over. You auditioned.
Yeah.
You've done the callback or the read or whatever the case may be. You're picked for the role. So even if, God forbid, you give a horrible performance, they're gonna air it. Like, you're already there.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most important thing, is like just being present, being aware, and just trying to enjoy yourself.
I love that.
Like, just try. Like, this industry is hard. This profession is hard. Don't make your victory hard.
Yeah.
Have fun.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true. So who are some of the actors who are like on your Mount Rushmore of the greats? Who would be your 4?
My 4.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. So this is a bit of like a obscure pick. Like, most people don't know who he is off the name alone.
Okay.
His name is Christoph Waltz.
Yes.
Do you know who that is?
I do know who that is.
Okay.
Yes. Was he? No, let me not even mess myself up. I was about to say, was he in Django?
He was in Django.
Okay.
Yes. So you know.
No, I do know him. Yeah, okay.
So for people who don't know, Christoph Waltz is a fire actor.
Yes.
Fire. Like,
and he's like, has such great comedic timing without trying to be funny.
You don't even know like the joke is there.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
He is on my Mount Rushmore. Like, everything I've seen him in, I'm just like, man, this guy is good.
Yes.
He's there. I would say, I know most people kind of go for like, especially like black people, like, oh, I'm gonna pick Denzel, which I think Denzel deserves to be there. But for me, Samuel L. Jackson is on my Mount Rushmore.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
I think like, we take him for granted because he's in everything. And you're just like, I'm like, no, but he's amazing in everything.
Yes.
The movie will be bad and he'll be fire in the movie.
Yes.
You're like, man, everything about this was horrible. Samuel Jackson, I liked what he was doing in that movie.
Right.
So that's 2. I would say that Angela Bassett's on my Mount Rushmore. I think people kind of underestimate the run that she's had in Hollywood.
Absolutely.
Like, she's been famous since I was a child.
Yes.
And
same.
still like in those rooms, like, killing it. Killing it. Like, the range is there. She's done like the horror like stuff recently, and everything she does is just like, well, I already know, like, it's gonna be same thing with Christoph. Like, it's another A1 performance from her.
Yeah.
So I found that very inspiring. Very like, wow, like, 60 plus and just killing it.
Yeah, and doesn't even look 60 plus
at all.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, aging with grace, acting with grace.
Right.
Your peers love you. I'm like, oh, one can dream.
Yeah, exactly.
One can dream. For the 4th pick, I'm trying not to pick Denzel.
Okay.
I just feel like Denzel's just too easy.
I know. I've heard Denzel a lot and Will Smith a lot.
Will Smith is a good pick.
He is.
He is a good pick. I don't think he gets his just due either.
What about a new actor? Someone who's newer, I guess.
Okay.
But like young and upcoming.
I like, and his name, I'm blanking on his name right now.
Maybe I can help you out.
British actor. John Boyega.
Yes. Yeah, I'm a fan.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think he does not get his just due in terms of like up and coming black actors who are like in A-list movies.
Yeah, because he was in The Woman King.
Yes.
Yeah.
And was like great in that.
Yeah, he was great. And Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Wars. I think he takes it very seriously. And I think, for as much as there's that unspoken beef between American actors and British actors. Yeah. Right? Like, people don't like to talk about that, but it's like, oh, there what? There's an accent there? Oh, what a surprise.
Yeah.
I think for coming from across the pond, like, I think he's really good.
Yeah. I agree. So now that you're here in Atlanta and getting your footing, what are some things you hope to achieve like in the next 3 years?
I would say I want to kind of really plug more into like film and TV.
Okay.
I would say that once I kind of found like my niche in commercial acting, I leaned a lot more heavily into that.
Okay.
Mostly because I think commercial acting can be fun. Like, a lot of times actors don't take it as seriously because, again, it's everyday roles, right? It's like it's the mom, you're the dad, you're the wife. You're not really challenging yourself. But there is a challenge to it, right? Like, if it was so easy, everyone would be booking commercials every day, right? So true. I think there's something to be said about that. But I think I want to kind of get more into like theatrical and TV again.
Okay.
I realized like I kind of stepped away from it because it was just a mixture of like burnout and I would say like heartbreak, right?
Yeah.
Like not for nothing, or it's like it's a lot easier to get turned away from a 3-line commercial and kind of go about my day than a 4-page audition where I'm like going from being angry on page 2 to crying on page 4 and still hearing nothing. Of like, for my heart's sake, I'm gonna take a break from like TV and film. But I think now where I'm at in my life, I'm ready to kind of like really lock into TV, really lock into film, and kind of see where that goes.
Lovely. Yeah. Good. Okay, so can you leave us with something for the new actors who want to make this their full-time job? What is something that you could just say to inspire them?
Okay, I've thought about this.
Okay,
right?
Good.
Before this podcast, I did my research.
Okay, good.
Of some of the questions you were going to ask.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? She's probably going to ask me this question. I have an answer.
Okay, good. Hit us with something, Anthony. What do you have?
My inspiration for newer actors, or just actors in general, is to not underestimate your ability to be a product in every market. So when I say that, one of the things that I wish I had taken more seriously as a newer actor, and it's never really too late, that's the good thing about these type of things, is you forget because, you know, the general nature of acting is I want to be in front of the camera, I want people to see like my skills and how talented I am at bringing this character to life. Great, right? But we also know the reality of like how often you're going to be booking these roles. Right. You can go for months at a time without work. So in the meantime, have you thought about hand modeling? Have you thought about doing print? Have you thought about doing stand-in work? Have you thought about just doing different ways of like, you know, even though you don't hear those stories often, you do hear the stories of like, yeah, I was a stand-in for 6 months. The director loved me, gave me a couple of lines. Boom, there goes my first co-star. Right? I think actors, they understandably so, underestimate the power of their self-brand. Okay. You know, of like, for example, you have a really good speaking voice, right? You're obviously very educated in your word choice. Right. Could you do an audiobook? Could you do voiceover work? Oh, that's probably could. Yeah. Right? But have you thought about it? Probably not. Because you're like, I want to be in front of the camera. But I'm like, but that's still acting. Voice acting is still acting. Right. Right. So I would say for newer actors of like, don't be so honed in on I gotta be in front of the camera at any cost that you overlook alternative paths that can lead you to the same destination. Absolutely. How many models have you seen who can't act worth a lick? Yeah. You know? Very true. But they're just pretty. Like, yeah. But okay. Yeah. So I think that's just something that I think newer actors need to be more mindful of like, listen, the entertainment industry as a whole has a lot more untapped resources that haven't been saturated just yet. Everything gets saturated over time, but I think don't be afraid to explore that. When someone tells you, hey, you know, like, I love what you do with your nail polish. Could you do that with a Coke can in your hand? Right? Like, there's just certain things where I'm like, oh, don't limit yourself. Right? Don't limit yourself in terms of like, it has to be in front of the camera or nothing. And I think that opens more opportunities than people realize. Lovely. Lovely. Well, tell everyone where they can connect with you. So I have one of the most unconventional places to connect in terms of names. Unfortunately, being on social media before social media became a thing. Yeah. My handle for everything is not the easiest to find. But I go by Antonius the Great on everything. So the Antonius is Antonius. Okay. Which is usually pretty normal. But then the Great is actually the Great. So D-A. Great. So that's Instagram. My website is basically based off that. So once you know it, you know it. But when it was like, oh, so I look up Anthony. No, you won't find me that way. Find me. Yeah. But that's probably the easiest way to find me, and that's like on everything. Perfect. Instagram, YouTube, all that. It's all good. We'll make sure we link everything, in the show notes, so we can collab and everything. So, any last final thoughts? Anything that was on your mind before you came? Anything that needs to be said? I'm glad you asked. Okay. No, I think one thing to keep in mind is we're definitely in a different space in the industry pre-COVID, post-COVID.
Yes.
Right. So I think a lot of times when actors are watching people on YouTube who made it, or watch people who gave advice 2 years ago, 3 years ago, take that advice with a grain of salt. The industry is changing drastically.
Yes.
Everything is moving to streaming, and they're not talking about it enough, but a lot of these companies are still figuring it out. They don't have the answer. There's no like clear-cut way of pay or things like that, right? So I think the best thing you can do is to try to be as up-to-date as possible on the way the industry has changed since COVID.
Okay.
Like, I think you're doing yourself a disservice as a newer actor, as an established actor, still focusing on like things will get back to pre-COVID.
Yeah,
They're not.
Yeah.
They're not. It doesn't mean you can't be successful. Doesn't mean you can't make money. But you have to be aware of like when you see these 3 A-list actors doing commercials, there's a reason for that.
Right.
And they normally, when we were growing up, it's like they were only on TV and they're only on film.
Right.
Maybe they sold you a little bit of Propel water every now and then. But now you're like, man, what's that?
I know.
Denzel selling some, like some Rogaine? Like, what's
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just, you got to like look at where the industry is headed and just trying to stay as current as possible. That's your best ally.
Yeah, I definitely agree because every day to day, week to week,
you find out something new. You're just like,
you're like, oh, that's what they're doing now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Anthony. This was really lovely.
Yeah. Thank you for having me here,
Thank you. So make sure you all subscribe to the Call Sheet podcast on YouTube, and I'll link everything Anthony Grant in the show notes, and we'll see you all next time.
All right.
Peace.